Greetings and namaste. This is Shiva, your friendly neighborhood wellness co-creator. Today's topic is around diversity. And it's of course going to map back to wellness for students, for classrooms, for society as a whole, but also our individual perspective on life. So bear with me here as I kind of try and weave those different threads together. Not so different in my opinion, because it's all one big, beautiful life. But, my journey is not everyone's journey. So we'll put a little narrative around there. We'll put some connections. So it kind of makes a little sense and has a little flow to it. So I'm reading this article by ᴂ괂ⴍ and pardon me if I didn't pronounce the last name correctly. I've heard Matthiasen. I've heard Matheson, obviously. So if it needs to be said differently, please let me know in the comments. But the article is titled, Why Diversity in Classrooms Matters. Now, for me, I kind of like to sometimes start with a higher level view, how overarching a concept is, what's the scope of something, and then I sort of whittle down into these different examples. So when I think about this particular topic, I kind of had this come up for me. So if you can see, I've kind of crossed out the class in classroom diversity. So it's room diversity. Then I've kind of added my own little, subtitle here, a multicultural synthesis. So what do I mean by that, and how does that impact wellness? So now Connie's article, going back to it for a second, and I'll link to it in the description below, so feel free to check that out. It's a very short article, so it'll take way less time than you watching this video, for example. But her article makes some points about kind of the irony that exists today where, and granted the article is about, I think, 5 years old, but still, if anyone's been seeing the news lately, and if you have any clue as to what BLM stands for, Black Lives Matter, things of that nature, this is part of that overarching topic, that overarching struggle for diversity, equity, inclusion, and really a celebration of all three of these. So Connie basically draws attention to the irony that exists where, on the one hand, society is getting more diverse, it's getting more multicultural, it's a melting pot, right? I mean, the melting pot moniker used to be applied to cities back in the day, but now it's in towns. Anywhere there's internet is basically a melting pot because there's exposure to anything and everything under the sun, literally, right? So given that sort of increasingly coming together of different cultures or coexisting of different cultures or struggle to understand different cultures, there's also in the school system an increasing segregation. Now, segregation is not a new term to the school system. It's not a new term to society in general. For me, it's basically someone or many people or a few people in power treating others differently in a way that suits them. So it's essentially, as it's normally said, it's an abuse of power, because those in power want to stay in power and they want to keep the others from rising above should they, overthrow the powers that be. So, segregation's going up, yet multiculturalism and diversity is going up in society. I mean, so what's gonna happen, right? So a student's gonna go through the school system in a segregated sort of experience, and they're gonna come out the other end and gonna be, flung into this melting pot, like I said, of multiculturalism. And what are they gonna do there? Are they gonna find their way instantly? Are they gonna struggle? Are they gonna be confused? Are they gonna be maybe angry? Are they gonna, not recognize it? Are they gonna try and do away with it? There's gonna be something, right? It's not gonna be a smooth transition. So that was really both confounding and surprising, and not necessarily surprising too, because that's sort of been how at least the modern world has asserted its might. It's like might is right, Darwin's theory, survival of the fittest, all of that. I mean, it's sort of the same theme, right? It's this power thing, and it's this retaining power thing. It's the superiority thing, and it's retaining that superiority thing. You think of like tyrants over the years. You think of dictatorships over the years. You think of, non-democratic regimes. And you, on the flip side, think of uprisings and riots and revolts and revolutions and, independence from colonial rule and all that type of stuff. It's all the same thing. From a school perspective and from a right now perspective, how can this climate be improved? That's the question, right? Because status quo is obviously not working for us. And, powers that be, they might be sitting in a high enough place today, but tomorrow, they might be ladders against those towers, and there'll be these common folk or whoever they're trying to oppress, getting their revenge, or trying to, get their eye for an eye, or just calling it even, one way or the other. So it's not a viable thing. It's not a long-term thing. It's like, and it's not a happy thing. It's just not a creative thing. I mean, if you look at segregation and the amount of money that's poured into there, and the lines that are drawn between neighborhoods, and how certain schools are like the blue-eyed boys per se, they're given the silver spoon and preferential treatment, but other schools where kind of the riffraff goes, or the folks that don't matter as much or don't have the backing of wealth or power behind them, can kind of scrape by. They're left to their own devices. Yeah, we'll do some lip service. We'll put some funds their way, but really, there's not like a well-oiled machine or a structure really uplifting them. Now, Connie's article also points out how economically mixed or socioeconomically mixed groupings of students have been successful in not necessarily bringing the creme de la creme down, but in uplifting the ones that need that boost, that do not have maybe that supportive neighborhood or home atmosphere, or parents who are working, multiple jobs already to give them time to help them and support them in their, academic endeavors, or their choice of careers, or setting them up with some sort of a business training. So that was a ray of hope for sure. And it was kind of reminded me of this sort of little phrase I have on my what I call my focus board. It's just like a board where I can move around letters, like basically a Scrabble board where the letters don't fall off. If I hang it vertically, you can kind of poke them in to that board. But what I have on there is the phrase "keep good company." And the reason I have that there is that when I look back at my own life and my own school experiences, I know that certain decisions I took were because of social influence, of being with other students and being exposed to their parents' strategies and thinking as to how to excel in a certain way. So, for example, when I was in high school, I needed to decide whether I was going in for a science sort of education, or was I going for like a liberal arts based education essentially, or what we call commerce based education, which is all about business and management and that type of thing. And sort of the wind that I was caught up in was more on the science side of things. So that's where I pivoted toward, even though none of my parents had careers in science per se. And in fact, none of my immediate family that had, basically grown up around were directly into a hardcore science career. No one was a doctor, no one was an engineer. But because of this social and economic exposure of my friends, and like I said, their parents, and how their parents were setting my friends up and my peers up for like tuitions. So these were more like AP classes, if you will, where one was supposed to prepare in advance for what's coming. So for maybe if you were going to engineering college, because there was so much competition, there was usually an entrance exam in addition to what you scored in high school. So you had to score a minimum in high school, but really what mattered is this entrance exam where they tested you on those relevant subjects. For engineering, for example, it was called PCM, physics, chemistry, and math, or maths. That was what one was prepared for, both in terms of the subject matter content as well as the test taking strategy. So you had limited time, you had maybe negative marking for getting an answer wrong. So, guesswork was sort of frowned upon in a lot of these entrance exams and could bring your score down. You were supposed to go for these tuitions and sort of prepare for that. Just like an athlete trains for an event, this was the event for getting into engineering college. This was that passport. So if it wasn't for this exposure I had, which I am sort of likening to this mixed grouping analogy or scenario of, you put diversity in a room, and if it's a healthy structure overall, if it's really celebrated, if it's really something that is shared and is used to create community, everyone will benefit. So although I wasn't necessarily in a state of poverty or a minority in that sense, as I'm speaking in terms of the U.S. school system that the article refers to, but at the same time, I find there is that same theme of, because there were different opinions and strategies, and there was that exposure to all of this diversity, I was able to recognize more choices that were available to me, as opposed to if I was not in as diverse a mix, or specifically if I were not exposed to that particular perspective. That was not something that I would have received within my immediate circle. So I think that's definitely a way to experience diversity for what it is. Because no matter your race, no matter your skin tone, no matter your culture, no matter your eating habits, no matter your language, none of this has developed overnight. This has come over a period of time. There's like blood, sweat, tears, stories, sacrifices, accomplishments, great feats that have been part of this journey. And when one truly expresses an openness, a curiosity, one is so much more understanding, first of all. One is so much more empathetic. Oh, now I get it. There's also this other video, and I'll link that too in the description. Again, an older one that, Fox 26 is profiling a high school in Texas where the student population is a majority minority. Now, one would expect, whoa, this is a diverse school. Everything's going to be great. But no, that's not the case. Talk to the boys, talk to the girls. There are themes, right? There's this sort of notion of, oh, you're different from me. And why are you different? And you should speak a certain way. Like, accent is a huge thing in the United States. It's like no one's ever seen a foreign movie, or no one knows that there's over 1 billion people that live in China who have Chinese food for breakfast. It's just like weird, not so common sense stuff like that goes around sometimes. But back to that Texas school, it was eye-opening to see that a diverse school was also very cliquish. It was very segregated, and not because of anything the school was necessarily doing. It was because how the students decided to cope with that diversity. And maybe it was a reflection of, well, the school didn't do things to encourage the intermixing, or their home and social environments were also maybe, if not embracing diversity, in a sense just unable to get to grips with it, or maybe saying, okay, just stay away from like those guys, who look like thugs, they're gonna rob you, just stereotyping in general. And not to diss stereotypes, there's something that caused the stereotype to happen, right? It didn't happen out of thin air. It's got something fueling that fire. But if you just stop at the stereotype, the externally manifested piece, then you're missing the story, right? So you go deeper. Okay, why is the stereotype? Why is it still continuing, And then you can start to unravel. And then you can maybe start to understand. And then you can start to accept it. And then maybe you're going to be part of doing something about it. You're going to be part of taking action on it. So the stereotype, at least the negative ones, are called out for what they are. And also, on the flip side, the positive stereotypes are brought to light. There's not an even balance of both. So, going back to diversity sort of as a panacea, it is not a panacea. It is just the beginning of witnessing something that exists. The next part is to construct meaning from it. And the part after that is to embrace it and celebrate it. And even if it's a diverse perspective from one's own, maybe to hold it in respect, in mutual respect and regard of, hey, that's a point of view. It's valid in the sense that, hey, even if one person in the world has that point of view, it's still valid. It exists. I can't deny that existence. So yeah. So yeah, this other little picture I have here is got this boat going, diversity is going this side, excellence is going that way. So this was something, I got to be honest, when we were putting our kids in school, we were deciding the school for our kids, we were torn, because now we are, in the US known as POCs, people of color. And now, having grown up in India and having schooled in India for the most part, I wanted that melting pot experience for my children, because I knew that had been so incredible for me to just know and be exposed to all of these different nations and cuisines and hobbies and games and dresses and whatnot. But when you look at like the school ratings, like the quantitative pieces, the data pieces, you find, so this school is in that neighborhood, ghetto neighborhood maybe, or kind of less preferred neighborhood, and the grades are down there. And then you look at this other school in this more upscale neighborhood, and the grades are up here. So as a parent, what do? You want the diversity and you want the excellence. And if you're conservative, you're probably going to choose excellence because, hey, I want to set up my kids for success. I want them to be, have a smooth career. I want them to have a good life. Diversity, they'll have to find some other way to get it. Maybe school's not the place to get it. And that's a pity. That's really a pity to see that, we're in 21st century here and we're still talking about how can we, being one human race, live in a manner that is uplifting for all. That's, I guess, the whole conundrum of equity, right? Is how do you bring about that equity? So I think equity starts in the heart and then it's executed by the head, which is sort of something I maintain in general, that, kind of let your heart guide you to a place and then let the head execute, do the concrete steps. Don't be loosey-goosey there. But be true to your soul, be true to your heart, be true to your spirit, be true to your emotions. Don't do something that would adversely affect another person. And there's always a creative solution. There always is. No question. So how do we do this multicultural synthesis thing? So I think it's going back to, our kids. We sort of took the middle road approach. We were like, okay, we're not going to go to the highest rated school. We're not going to go to the lowest rated school. We're going to follow the middle path and see how it works for our kids, and let them be the proof of the pudding, right? Let them tell us through their behavior, through their, the interest they develop, through the excellence they achieve, as to how engaged they are with the school, how supported they feel by their teachers and their peers, how socially active they are. So kind of looking for more of those personal markers, not just, what's written on like greatschools.org or something. I mean, that's a useful input, but it's not the whole story. So I think it's not an easy answer, and I think it's everyone's responsibility, and not even responsibility. It's something to be actively engaged in, is to foster more acceptance, more understanding, more empathy, more compassion. And really, I'm like I want to get to the fun part, right? Where's the good food? Where's the music? Where's the dancing? Let's get to the celebration too. Let's not be too serious about all of this stuff. So on that note, I invite you to maybe go check out the 2 links I will post, and let me know what your thoughts are on all of these different things we covered. Not just from a classroom perspective, but from a room perspective, and from a house perspective, and from a neighborhood perspective, and from a community perspective, and from a city perspective, and from a state and country and continent and a world perspective. What sort of sparks thought or action or innovation or aha moments for you? I'd love to hear that. So, wishing you wellness, diversity, and wellness. A diverse amount of wellness. How about that? Namaste for now. We'll see ya.